Hello and welcome back to 7 Days of Halloween. Hi everyone, I'm Monica, and thanks for coming back on our 7th day on our 7 Days of Halloween series here at TaylorMade Cards for You. Now you may know that I like to work with mixed media products, and when I got to the 7th day I realized that I hadn't gotten out my texture paste. So of course for my final card we are going to be working with some texture paste, some stencils, and I'm also going to introduce to you another technique to create a moon. So the stencil that I'm working with today is from Tim Holtz, and it's one of his new Halloween stencils. So to begin, I did cut out a circle using my Big Shot and a circle die cut. Now what's nice about this stencil is the bats have a perfect diagonal pattern. So I was able to actually capture all of my bats without having to worry about having half bats on my cardstock. So using some painter's tape, I went ahead and I taped it down to my white cardstock, but I also added a yellow post-it note underneath where the circle is open so I don't get texture paste all over my craft mat. Now I didn't want any of those zigzags to be on my cardstock, so I did mat those as well. Now the texture paste that I'm working with is from Bo Bunny, and it is black glittery texture paste that I picked up from So Susie Stamps. Now typically I'm not a glitter girl. I don't use a lot of glitter on my cards, and really it's just because I find it to be really messy and it gets all over the place. But I thought with the glitter actually being in the texture paste, I might be safe. I really like working with texture paste, and it was a product that I wanted to give a try. Now the texture paste was a little bit thinner than I'm used to. I'm used to a little bit thicker consistency with my texture paste, and you can control the application with thicker paste. So I was a little concerned that the paste would get underneath the stencil and affect the integrity of the image. So with the paste being just a little bit more runny, I was very careful when applying it to my stencil. Also, when I lifted my stencil, I wanted to be real careful not to move it too much, because I knew with it being a wetter paste that it may again affect the integrity of the image of the stencil. Now typically with texture paste it doesn't take very long to dry, but because this paste was actually a little bit more wet, I decided to let it air dry for about 15 minutes. I didn't want to take the chance using a heating tool because again, with it being a wetter paste, I was concerned that the air of the heating tool may blow the paste around, and I just didn't want to take that chance. Also, you can see the small detail of putting the post-it note underneath the open circle was a great idea because it did make for easy cleanup. So once my bats were completely dry, I brought out my faded jeans, which is again my go-to distress ink for night skies. Now I didn't want the sky to be too dark as it was in the card on day 5, I believe. So instead of using my blending tool, I decided to use my clarity brush and just brush over the bats and the white cardstock. Again, if I were to use a blending tool, I was concerned that it may affect the stenciling, and of course I didn't want to take any chance of ruining my beautiful bats. Now when you're using your clarity brush, the ink is going to go on a lot more slowly. So it's not like a blending tool where the ink will go on very easily. It will actually take you a bit longer to add your ink. But again, with the clarity brush, it's a more controlled technique, so you can add as little or as much ink as you need. Now I wanted the edge of my card to be a little bit darker, so this is where I just took my ink pad directly to the white cardstock. Now with the black soot, I did decide to use the blending tool. I wanted the color to be a little bit darker because I wanted it to look like a gloomy sky. And the combination of black soot and faded jeans are a great combination to get this desired look. Now the texture paste that I'm going to use to make my moon look like it is bleeding is the texture paste that I'm typically used to. The consistency is a little bit thicker, and it is more of a paste rather than a liquid. What I like about this actual texture paste is that you can add color to it. So you don't necessarily need to buy all sorts of color texture paste. But again, the reason I used the black rather than adding black to this one is I did want the glitter to be in my bats. The color that I'm using is Fired Brick, and this is just simply a re-inker for my Distress ink pad. But as you can see, it works great to add color to your texture paste. And I like this technique because it enables you to actually match your colors. So if you're using the Fired Brick Distress ink pad, you can come in and add some texture paste and your color combinations will match. But you want to be careful when you are adding ink to your texture paste, because again, you do not want it to be too wet, because that can affect putting it onto the stencil. And again, with this stencil, you can see that if I'm not careful, it will lift up. So I'm having to hold it and actually work from bottom up, so that way the stencil doesn't move and again affect the integrity of the image I'm trying to stencil. So of course I wanted to add some color around my moon, and in the past I've been adding yellow around the rim of it. But because this is a bloody moon, I had the idea of adding red as well. But I forgot to remind myself of my kindergarten days, where when you mix colors, you can get another color. So of course, when you mix red and yellow, you're going to get orange. So as I progressed, I realized that I wasn't going to end up with a yellow bright moon with some red streaks. I was going to end up with an orange moon. So in the end, I did have to come back with some red distress paint to actually fix that orange glow. Now when I was picking up some vellum over at Michael's, I saw this vellum that actually had a pattern to it. And the more that I looked at it, the more I realized it would work great for a moon. So this is where I actually had the idea to put the vellum behind an open circle and actually stamp an image so that it looked like the moon had a face. Now if you don't have this stamp, this technique will work for any image behind the moon. Now my original idea was to actually just stamp some bats behind the moon, but when I was rummaging through my stamps, I found this stamp that was the perfect size for a moon, and that's when I decided to actually add a face to my moon. Now I'm fortunate that I do have a Xyron machine, and it works great when I'm working with vellum because none of my glue marks will show through. But if you don't have a Xyron machine, then you just want to make sure when you do add your glue to your vellum that it's not going to show through. So for this particular card, you'd want to make sure that you glue where the cardstock will actually cover your glue marks, not directly where the open circle shows up. Now if you are using your Xyron machine, you want to make sure that you add the glue part to the top of your image and not the back of your image, because you're going to be adding the vellum directly over your stamped image. And then from here, it was just a matter of adhering that panel to the back of my card and then trimming the excess to match the card size. So once I had trimmed off the excess, I was ready to mat my card onto some black cardstock. And the cardstock that I'm using is from Ranger, and it is a little bit textured, so I will leave the actual product that I used in the links below for you. Now this stamp set I've had for years, but it's a great one. I usually get rid of stamps that I haven't used in a while, but this stamp set always seems to be making its way to my craft table. And it had the perfect sentiment for my Halloween card. On all of the other Halloween cards I've been using Happy Halloween, so I thought it was time to actually put a trick-or-treat sentiment. And with this being a little bit eerie, I thought it was the perfect sentiment for the top of my card. And as a final touch, I am using the bat image from Stampendous. And this, if you recall, was the first stamp set that I used on the first day with those cute little pumpkins. I wanted to have one bat that was just off to the side and to add something to that white space. So this does bring us to the end of my 7 days of Halloween series. I really hope that you've enjoyed all the cards that I've created this week, and that I've at least given you some ideas and some techniques that you can use in your card making as well. Hopefully you've been leaving comments along the way, and that you have subscribed to my channel, because I am going to do a drawing at the end of the month, and one person will actually receive all 7 of these cards. I figured I would do it at the end of the month to give a little bit more time for people to actually see the videos and play along. And even doing it at the end of the month, you should get the cards in time to use them for Halloween. Now, as an added feature, I did decide to actually come back tomorrow with the bonus video. So be sure to check the channel tomorrow for one last video. I will provide a list of all the products that I've used to create this card, along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed my videos this week, I would love for you to share my link. And as always, I appreciate your supporting my channel. Thanks so much, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow for my bonus video.